Okay. Hello,
Hey,
everyone. Hi, Rachaeldaisy. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, Annie. How are you?
I'm great. It's so fabulous to see you in person.
I know. That's how I
H-
feel about you. It's like here
How are
we
we
are.
doing? How are we doing with time over there? What time are you at?
Well, it's 7 o'clock in the morning, which is quite reasonable, I think. I have been up in the middle of the night to do Zoom classes and webinars before, but 7 o'clock is perfect. I'm here. I'm
Okay.
fresh as a daisy, and yeah, happy to
Well,
share all my quilts and stories with you.
I can see that in the background. I love it. While we're letting people join us, I'd love for people to let us know where you're joining us from. Maybe in the chat box. Let me see. Show chat previews. Here we go. Is the chat box working? If it does, give us a shout. Let us know where you're coming from. Joy from Centertown, USA, Iowa. Wyoming, we have people. Oh, that's fabulous. I hope everyone is having it as I'm here from in Santa Fe, and our winds here are incredible. I feel like everywhere else in America, the winds are crazy too. But enough about where I am. We're joined here with Rachaeldaisy Dodd. Hello, hello from Victoria, Australia.
Hello.
And if you hadn't joined us earlier, we were just talking about what time it is there. It's 7 a.m. where you are. And so thank you for getting up so early and joining us. We'll let these folks jump in and join us and let us know where they're from as we begin. While people are just joining us, I want to let everyone know the sort of the purpose of this webinar that we have with Rachaeldaisy today. And it's basically just to let people know about this upcoming workshop, in-person workshop. She is going to be in the USA, teaching an in-person workshop with us this August 12th to August 16th on Madeline Island. And we are thrilled to add her to our list of incredible quilters and artists galore. Rachel, why don't you go through a little bit about what you do so folks here can get a little bit know a little bit more about you, and then perhaps we could open it up into some questions and answers. How does that sound?
That sounds great. Yes.
Good, good, good. All right, well, take it away.
Okay. So I'm Rachaeldaisy. Um, I always say you can call me Rachel or Rachaeldaisy or even Daisy. I'll answer to anything. So I'm a quilter in Australia, quilter, designer, just someone who's passionate about quilting, really. For the workshop that we've got coming up, I'll be concentrating on my Whizbang quilts. And I'll tell you a bit more about Whizbang when I'm showing you my presentation. You're going to learn all about that. But basically, like where the name comes from and a bit more about the background of the quilts. But basically, in the workshop, we're going to be making these amazing kaleidoscopic circles. So things like this. They're all made with beautiful prairie points and placed in different ways to get different effects. So we'll be making those, and then I'll be talking about how to bring them together in quilts in all different styles. So I always say that every one of these quilts is unique, and the blocks are beautiful and unique as well. They're all like snowflakes. So we'll be covering that. We'll be making the blocks. We'll be coming up with beautiful quilt designs to show your blocks off. I'll cover things like hand quilting, or even different quilting, different ways to quilt so that, these quilts look fabulous. We'll be covering, even making yo-yos or improv piecing. I'm basically going to come over and show you all my tricks. I'm really
Yeah.
like, in 5 days, I just want to show you everything that I know and share, I'm just there totally for the people in the workshop. So, um, and a lot of fun along the way. So I don't know, I could keep raving on about it.
Well, that's
Um,
fabulous. We can't wait to have you over here, Rachel. When we were talking earlier, I was just, just asking you more questions. And I said, so it's like origami for quilting, just folding and pressing and, it's going to be amazing. The color techniques.
Absolutely, and that's the best way to describe it. Origami for quilting. It's a really good way. And it's also got that lovely feeling of like, there's actually a really lovely mindfulness to it. It's sort of, but then there's also an excitement, like, as you're building it out, like, and then the patterns start emerging, and there's just always this point where it's just like, this is so exciting. So it's actually, I don't know, as you can see, I'm very passionate about these techniques. And I just love seeing people, I love sharing it with people because then they pick up that passion as well. It's really good fun.
Oh, that's so wonderful. Now, do you have sort of a slideshow that you were going to show us, a presentation?
I do, I do. Are you
Fabulous.
ready for that?
I think I am. I cannot wait to see it.
Okay, okay. Well, everyone settle in because I'm going to show you a lot of photos of beautiful
Okay.
quilts. All right, let's just jump
And
in.
will we be able to ask questions throughout this in the chat box if need be? Or would you
Yeah,
like us to wait until the end to ask our questions?
see how you go. If there's questions and you think that they apply to what I'm showing you, then just jump in. I'm happy for
Great.
this. I want to feel like we're all in the room chatting and having a nice time together.
Thank you.
So yeah, I'm fine for that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll share my screen. We'll get into the slideshow and you'll learn a lot more about me along the way. Okay, here we go. So Whizbang Adventures. Okay. I've just introduced myself, of course, so you know now I'm Rachaeldaisy. I always love this photo on the left-hand side. I think it sums me up perfectly. You can see I love quilts, I love vintage things, I love color, and I love cups of tea. And on the right there, you'll see my little dog. That's Daisy. It's an old photo because she's passed away now, but that's how I got my name. Because people always say, "Is Rachaeldaisy your real name?" It's a nickname, but it just fits. And it came from me and hanging out with my little dog, and it just grew from there. So that's how I got the name Rachaeldaisy. It's also because, so here we are. This is where I live. So I'm in just outside of Melbourne, down that bottom part of Australia. And this is my garden. I always love to show my neighbours. They're my little cows. Well, they're not mine, they're my neighbours' cows, but they love to come and say hello. And that's a photo of my garden at the moment. There's lots of leaves to rake. It's just nice to show you, just give you a bit of a feel for where I am, where I'm creating. So I was a florist for many years, for more than 20 years. And it's nice for you to see that because that sort of helps explain my colour, my sense of colour, and also the way I've just jumped into quilting and I just love to create. I love to play with colour. I love to play with shapes. I love to jump around in styles too. So you can see in these two photos when I was a florist, one minute I'd be making, a traditional wedding bouquet, something very pretty and soft. And then the next minute I'd be making big, exciting arrangements using fruit and vegetables. And you'll see that with my quilting as well. I really jump around in styles and colors. Um, Now I do make lots of different quilts. It's not just these folded fabric quilts, but today we are focusing on on my Whizbang quilts. Here we go. But we're going to start in the beginning because people often say, well, how did you find quilting? So I found quilting because I'd moved to a new city and I needed a hobby. I was in a new place and I was working a different job that had a few more days off. And I thought I really, want to take up something new and different. I'd always loved textiles, like always, been attracted to like fashion and making things and embroidery or tapestry or, making home things like cushions and curtains. And so it sort of feels very natural that one day I was going to come across quilting. So I did. And the quilt on the right-hand side was my very first quilt. And I just did it myself. I thought, oh, how hard can it be to make a quilt of squares? And I did everything wrong. I didn't cut them evenly and then not sewn, I didn't match the points. I didn't do anything right. Um, and hand quilted it myself in the worst quilting, but I love it. That quilt I still use to this day, and it's just one of my favorites. And you can see I loved bright colors back then, and lots of pattern, and I still do. So the quilt on the left-hand side was another quilt that I made probably about 6 months later. So I really jumped in. And I love sharing this quilt because it's very much like the quilts I'm making today. So yeah, I just, still that love of color, very scrappy quilts. I know I remember a friend of mine gave me a big bag of scraps for this, and so I just jumped in and made this quilt. And of course, I love dots in my quilts. You'll see that too. So, but it's fun to sort of see where I started from and that I've just really just kept going from there. My first foray into prairie points was this quilt, Carnival Dance. And this one I made because I was writing blog posts for Craftsy. And one of the topics on their blog list was prairie points. And I thought, oh, I'm going to write a blog post about those. But I'd never made a prairie point, let alone a quilt. So I thought, well, if I'm going to write about them and write a blog post, I better make a quilt. So that's why I've made the quilt to really feature prairie points.
Mm.
And so I really, and it shows them off. It's like saying, yep, here we are, bright and colorful and ready for a party. So I love to show those two earlier quilts because really that leads in to this next quilt. This is Whizbang. Now, Whizbang, as you can see, it's made with lots of prairie points. It's done in there's a few different styles. The idea for it came from making a pot holder. So I'm sure that most of you have seen those pot holders made with prairie points. They're done in a folded star or an Amish star way. And I made one of those. And as I was making it, I kept thinking, oh, how would this look in a quilt? Like, how could I incorporate these techniques into a quilt? So one day I started making the quilt. And I played around with different ways of doing them. I did a bit of research into these sorts of blocks. Not that there's that much research, like information out there about them. But I, started with, I found some things about the pine cone quilt style, the folded star, Somerset star, the Amish star. So sort of taking at all those sort of techniques and then also doing hybrids. You can see I just kept having fun with it and making up my own, and then, putting the pictures in the middle, and that sort of thing. So I really just had a lot of fun. At first I was just going to make 9 blocks. And then I thought, well, they're fun to make. I'll make 16 blocks. And then I was having so much fun. You can see I ended up with 25 blocks and then lots of little ones around the edge. And then I thought I better stop there. That's big enough. I'm so glad that halfway through making this quilt, I entered it into the Sydney Quilt Show. And the Sydney Quilt Show is our biggest quilt show in Australia. It's the biggest quilt show in the Southern Hemisphere. So it's quite a big show. And it went on to win Best in Show that year, which was a huge honor. It was like, I always say it's the best day of my life. And even, I say that in front of my husband, he always smiles, but okay, my wedding was it was the second best, but he knows how important this was to win at the Sydney Quilt Show, especially to win with such a different quilt. It was huge. It was just wonderful. So I'll show you a few close-ups of the blocks. Oh, there's me winning. You can see the big smile on my face. And plus I included this one because you can see the scale of the quilt. It sort of helps, it's one thing to just show photos of quilts, but you can actually, it kind of brings it to life when you've got a person in the photo. So that's me and my big smile. Here we go. So I'll show you a few close-ups. So this is done in the pine cone style. So the pine cone block or pine cone quilts, or the pine cone block is the state block of Alabama.
Oh.
So yeah, and it's done in that where you start in the center and you build out the block in concentric circles. So you get that wonderful movement in the circles. It's almost electric, it's got so much movement as you look at it. It's wonderful. So when I was making them and I was really pushing myself to be creative, I would do things like, this block has a lot of triangles in it. It's very full. So how would it look if I just simplified it? How would a block look if I just use less triangles and try to get just as strong an impact? And I think this one really works. I think it's so cute because it's really just the stripe fabric and a bit of buttons, a few buttons, and buttons always make everything look better. Um, then when I was making them, I thought, well, I've got lots of triangles pointing in, so why don't I have some triangles pointing out around the edge? And these blocks can be wonderful for showing off those gorgeous feature fabrics, or those, those picture fabrics that we buy and
Yeah.
we love. They frame them beautifully. Okay. Oh, here's one that's got fussy cut writing, the triangles around the edge. And it says Whizbang 2016, which is when I made it,
Fun.
and RD for Rachaeldaisy. And then a heart. This will be one of my all-time favorite blocks. I mean, I've made lots and lots of these now, and I just love that one because I love hearts and I love the way it shines out from the quilt. So after seeing a few of those close-ups, there it is again.
Yeah.
And you can see like the variation of these blocks is amazing. And that's what I love. Like when I'm teaching these in workshops, I really love teaching the different blocks so that when you put them all on a quilt, you're giving the viewer so much to look at. Yeah, just the different variety. And plus, as a maker, it's really exciting to try different things. So,
It's
okay.
absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, they're fascinating, aren't they? They're just, I don't know, they're
Yeah.
captivating. Captivating, I think, is a good word. So when I started teaching, I know not everyone wants to make a big, giant whiz-bang quilt. And I should say too, so Whizbang was the first quilt I made. So I call the blocks that I teach collectively Whizbang. But of course, they do have the different styles. So when I am teaching them, I'll be saying, oh, well, this is a pine cone block, or this is a pine star block, or this is based on, the Amish star. So I do refer to their proper names. But as a collective name, like an umbrella name for all of them, that's when I refer to them as a whiz-bang, the whiz-bang blocks or whiz-bang quilts. So when I started teaching these blocks, I knew not everyone would want to make one with 25 blocks on it. So that's when I made this quilt called Merry Whiz. And it's only got 9 blocks. I always say the little blocks don't count because they're just using up your leftover triangles. And by then you're just having fun making them. But this one, it's got 9 big circles on it. So, and then the rest of the quilt is you can put with your, improv piecing or crazy piecing. You could fill that out with, a beautiful cave print, or you could even put a checkerboard, or cut up a jelly roll and do jelly roll strips. There's so much you can do with those sashing strips. But the great thing is you get the same exuberance of that first Whizbang quilt, but it's not as much work.
Mm.
And you
You
can
could
just have
almost
fun.
see the 3D-ness in that
Yeah.
center, it sort of, you can see it, that it's three-dimensional almost. It's wonderful.
Oh, that's the thing. You do see them. And it's really interesting whenever people see these quilts live, they can't stop themselves touching them
Mm.
and feeling them. And, they really do draw you in. They're quite wonderful in that way. So here's another one. Once again, it's only got 9 blocks, and so it's so doable and so much fun. You can see each block is so different, and you can have so much fun just focusing on each one. So yeah, here we go. So I've just gone on to make lots of these quilts because there's not a lot of examples of these quilts out there. I really wanted to make just lots to show people what you can do and to show that there's quilts, that these quilts suit any style. So these are very scrappy. You can see they're very, just wonderfully
Yeah.
scrappy. I love scrappy quilts. Here's one with more of a limited sort of color palette. The
Mm.
great thing about this is you can see the circles are all different sizes and they're floating. So it's taking it out of that block system that we usually
Mm.
work with in quilts. And this is a great quilt. This is a really fantastic. If they, want to come and learn from me and to make the blocks and they don't know which quilt to make, I'll often suggest this one, or that other Merry Whiz one. I think that those 2 quilts are really fantastic because, I don't know, they just show off the blocks and you can see how effective this one is. It's
Mm.
wonderful to see them floating. Okay, Zapzing Zowie. Now this
Wow.
one is great. It pushes it more into that modern sort of contemporary style.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, how effective is the solids? Like it just amazing. And it also takes it out of just being circles into, putting the triangles in rows and piecing them in different ways. So this is I think a really exciting piece, and I'll be able to. That's the thing with 5 days. I've got time to teach all of these different techniques. So if people want to come in and make something along these lines, we can definitely go for it. It's so much fun, and you can see a bit of a close up of my hand quilting there. I really love to play around with quilting stitches as well. They add so much texture because you've got texture going on with the circles and the blocks and with the prairie points. So it's fun to come in and add in hand quilting and buttons and rick-rack and all those and yo-yos. I'm a big yo-yo queen as well. I
I
love
saw
yo-yo.
the yo-yo puffs.
Yes, yes, yeah.
I saw those in the first couple quilts that you showed.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. They turn up in my quilts a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Oh, here's
And
a photo of me once
will you
again.
be showing them how to make those yo-yo puffs?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think yeah, most people that's what if they see me, they go, show me how do you do a yo-yo.
Nice.
Yeah, and they do. They go so perfectly with these quilts. Once again, because it's all texture. It's all about, I don't
Yeah.
know, folding and gathering fabrics. So this shows the scale of the Zapsing Zowie. And once again, just there I am. It kind of shows that I'm kooky and I have a bit of fun. Okay. Here's one that I made using old dish towels or tea towels. I made this quilt when I wrote my Whizbang book. And I knew the book would go out to the world, and I really wanted to have an Australian quilt, a quilt that just says hello and sunshine from Australia. And so this is what I made. And once again, this is it's a great way of using the blocks, that you can bring it together in almost a collage style because, yeah, because you can piece a quilt and then bring in the blocks in on top, and have them floating. So this is a really fun project. And I'm really like showing all of this just to entice people. So with 5 days, we really do have time to play around with these ideas, which is really great. Okay. And for people who, all those bright colors, it could be a bit bright for some. So it's really nice to show how beautiful these blocks are, in softer colors. They don't always have to be bright. They can just be beautiful, beautiful, softer colors, much more muted tones. Um, this quilt, interestingly enough, the background, so the actual quilt part I made, years ago. So about 2011, I made that background. And then when I was writing my book Whizbang, I was like, oh, I really want to do a cream quilt and I'll have to make a new one. And then one day I just went, well, why don't I just use the existing quilt I've got, make blocks and put them onto the quilt? So in that way, it's a lesson in saying, well, if you've got an old quilt that you feel like needs a bit of a spruce up, you can come along, learn how to make the circles and then add them to that quilt. So it's a fun way of actually using something you've already got. So, and this one, you can see there's doilies and, buttons and lots of recycled things. It's really lovely. Okay, Gee Whiz is moving more into sort of, once again, contemporary, modern sort of style, but sort of, yeah, different color palette as well. And in this one, I'm just, placing the triangles in a sort of more, almost a considered but random way. I don't know. I like to include this one because, as I say, it sort of shows that you can use them in a contemporary way. They don't have to always be sort of traditional. Okay, shirt tails. This one moves into the darker colors. See, as I say, like I'm just trying to show that they can be used in so many different ways. This one I actually made with my husband's shirts. And I did say to him at the time, because he came in with an armful of shirts and said, can you use these? And I said, well, of course I can. And I said, why don't you wear all your white shirts and the pale shirts? And he said, oh no, I'm saving those. They're for formal. But but I love the colors in this. I love the fact that it shows how beautiful these blocks are in those sort of, those rich blues and browns. It's really quite fun. And this one is made out of Liberty fabrics. One of the fun things about this quilt is that fabulous prairie point bunting around the edge. I think that's really fun. And just another way of using the prairie points. So, and once again, that leads into this one, which shows the prairie point bunting. The thing that's different about this quilt is that it's that one big block that works its way out. So it's like one big center. So the center would be it's about 38 inches across. So it's quite a big quilt. It makes a really big impact when you see it in real life. But we can do that as well. So you can just start in the middle and just keep working out to make a big block or a big, quilt. And then, by adding borders, it just gives it that something different. There's a close-up. Just once again, just sharing that texture with you. There's just, as you can see, there's the
All that
texture is
little
just,
happy yo-yos are all around the edge there. I can see
oh,
those.
yeah.
And the color
Yes.
looks amazing as well, like just the change in color.
Yes. Do you know, the fun story about this is, I mean, I made these, I just pulled out those colors. A lot of those are my favorite colors, yellows, hot pinks, blues. They're my favorite colors. So I pulled those out and I made all the triangles and I was pretty much just made the whole block. And I had a whole different idea for the borders. But then when I went to my cupboard one day, that pink floral fabric literally jumped out of the cupboard at me. It like literally jumped out and fell out at my feet. And I picked it up and went, oh my gosh, it matches perfectly. I'm going to have to use it. And it was just the right amount to do those triangles in the corners like that.
Yes.
And so I think that proves that there are sewing room fairies watching
Yes.
out. But because it really looks like I picked that first and then made the rest of the quilt around it. But
Yes.
yeah. So, but yeah, no, the colors really radiate. A lot of joy in that quilt. Now I'm going to show some of my students' quilts. People have come along to my workshops because it's nice for you to see. I mean, you've seen what I can do, but here are some that other people have done. So it's not just me. And these are actually, I always say, quite often my students' work are more impressive than my own. So, but here's some beauties. So Beth came along to me, and she said that she wanted to make a quilt inspired by her son's art. So that black picture on the right-hand side there, that was her son. Her son created that. And so setting out using the techniques, you can see there's the blocks on the left-hand side. And it's wonderful when you look at them, they're all different. And the way, I don't know, that's just, I find that so wonderful that they're all so interesting and different from each other. Now I'll show the finished quilt. Isn't that amazing? I just
Wow.
think that I know, like you just incredible. Like I think that's just so fantastic.
That's the black
So
background.
yeah, it really sets it off, doesn't it? Just
Mm.
amazing. And so I'll just go back for a sec. Like, isn't it just perfect to see from
Mm.
the son's art to the blocks to bang? That is amazing. Yeah, I think that's such an incredible quilt. Then we go on to Carla's Tutti Frutti quilt. And I just love this. Once again, it's so full of joy. To me, this one, she has captured a real sense of sunshine in this quilt. And you can see it's got all the wonderful elements of, rickrack and using the prairie points in different ways and really having fun with stripes and the binding there. Um, the photos of the birds are birds that would visit her every day. And so she really wanted to make a quilt to show them off. And I think that this one really works. It's just beautiful. I love
Mm.
it. Here's Vivian's. And I love this quilt because it's once again a totally different color palette. Those beautiful pinks and lilacs and it's just wonderful. And you can see the quilting there just adds a whole other element as well. So, and it's great because it does show these quilts can be long arm quilted
Mm.
in wonderful ways. So, and lots of beautiful texture. Okay. Sally Johnson, she went on to make this quilt and I love this one. So I always put variety in my quilts and that's just my nature. It's just what I do. But this quilt's so interesting because Sally has taken the one block, well, she's got her picture blocks And then her Pine Star blocks there are repeated. She's repeated the colors, and it's so effective. It's just really, I just love this quilt. It's so amazing.
Mm.
Uh, so it's just, once again, these are all showing you the different possibilities. Now, Holly's quilt. Holly signed up for one of my workshops. She saw a photo. She had no idea. She'd never heard of me. She said, I've come along and I just want to learn how to do these blocks. And she went on to create this quilt, and it's just incredible. She's called it Spread Your Wings because it's all about trying new things. And I just think that just sums up, you know, coming along to a workshop and trying new things and being open to seeing what happens. And so I just think this quilt is just really beautiful. Okay, so we'll talk. I've shown you a lot of quilts now. Now your mind will be swimming with all the quilts. So I just thought I'd talk about what we're actually going to do in the Missa workshop. So, you know, with our 5 days, I'll cover different ways of making the circles. And they can be made as squares too. So, you know, we'll talk about all of that. We'll talk about using the prairie points in different piecing ways. We cover, you know, then incorporating the blocks into quilts. And I really like, you know, when people come to the workshop, that we'll be making the blocks, and you know, some might go on to making the quilts. Some people, if they want to make their quilts at home and just concentrate on the circles in the workshop, that's fine too. But I'll make sure that before you leave, that you have a plan for what you're going to use them for. So you're not just being sent away with, you know, just not knowing what you're doing. I'll definitely make sure you've got a plan of what you're going to be making. We cover using embellishments, so the rickrack and buttons and yo-yos. We'll cover the different ways of quilting, including, you know, hand quilting. People often want to learn how I do my hand quilting, which is I love to use big stitch hand quilting, and you know, and incorporating a few sort of different organic sort of stitching methods. So we'll cover that. Pretty much just all the things you need to know. Like, yeah, and I cover it all. So here we go. Once again, here's some quilts. If you're sitting here going, well, if I sign up for the class, you know, all those, you know, there's so many quilts and they're all swimming around in my head and I wouldn't know which one to make. And I always say you can come along and we can just start making circles, just make beautiful circles. And then, you know, usually after like the second or third day, it really emerges as to what style would suit your circles that you're making. And because I've taught this a lot and I've made a lot of these quilts with people, I really sort of know, I can get a sense of which direction you should head in. And once again, this is the beauty of 5 days. We've got time to do that. So, and here's just some of the quilts that you could possibly make. Here we
Oh,
go.
wow.
And I love to say, most of all, this photo sums it up. Most of all, it's about having fun. We'll be learning new things. It's about me giving you lots of creative inspiration to apply to your quilting practice. So it won't just be learning about these. You'll be picking up, you know, different ways. Well, people often say to me that they start thinking about color and putting fabric together in a different way, after one of these workshops. You'll be going on to make a beautiful, unique quilt. And most of all, well, besides, you know, having fun is everything, but it's going to be the most amazing experience of being on a beautiful island. Like the whole setting, for making these blocks is just going to be beautiful. And we're going to be spending time being creative and with like-minded people. So it's just really going to be the most special time. I'm so excited about it. I think it's just going to be amazing. So here we go once again. I've sort of put these photos in. So if anyone is traveling and worried about, well, how will I fill a whole quilt in my, you know, bags? You can come with your, you know, with the triangles, and we can just make circles. And so they're so easy to transport. So, and then once again, as I say, and then I send you home with a plan to finish your quilt. So you can feel free to or feel comforted, I guess, by, the idea where you can just come and make circles, just, and they're so easy to transport. So nice and easy. So that's the end of my presentation. I hope I haven't taken up too much time. We want to have time for questions. So, but if you do want to find out more about me, I'm at Rachaeldaisy.com. On Instagram, I'm Blue Mountain Daisy. And of course, you can go to the Missa website to find out about me as well. So we've got more pictures of my quilts on there. So yeah. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you
Oh,
so much, Rachaeldaisy. That was just absolutely more than I had bargained for. It's just incredible what you have created, and to go from such sort of traditional quilts to these art pieces is amazing. So it's thank you for sharing that with us. I have a couple of questions to ask from some folks. You had just mentioned it at the very end. What role does color play in your quilts, and how do you go about selecting your color palettes? I know you said you could just come and we could make circles, but should they have some sort of idea of what their color palette is coming into this?
okay, that's a great question. So with your color palette, I mean, you could see from those examples that sometimes I just go really random and scrappy, like
Mm,
really just make triangles in all colors and then just have fun on the day playing with them. So you can do that. If you want to go a limited palette, you definitely can. And the other thing too, for people who sign up to the workshop, I'm really happy if people email me and run the colors by me, so I really want to like reassure people and say, if you want to, yeah, email your fabrics through or talk to me or whatever we can do so that you feel comfortable when you come to the workshop. But as an idea with a color palette, it's really, so once sometimes go scrappy. If you want to go a limited color palette, within that limited color palette, think about darker colors, put a few pop colors in there. Those darker colors really help create patterns, and also lighter colors. So some darks and some lights. Um, and so even in that dollop of cream quilt, well, it's mostly cream, but there were a few sort of blacks in there or charcoals, just to give it that sort of pop of color. Yeah, so darks and lights work really well. Yeah.
and doesn't matter if it's solids or patterns.
Doesn't matter if it's solid or patterns. If
Okay.
it's patterns, it's good to have sort of smaller scale, because
Okay.
bigger patterns can sort of get lost in the triangles.
Mm,
But having said that, if you do want to use some bigger scale, then if you mix it with some solids, that'll help break up the color as
mm,
well.
okay.
But small prints are really fantastic. Small
Okay.
prints, um, dots and spots are really happy. They add a lot of happiness to quilts.
I noticed.
Stripes, yeah, and you would have seen stripes really help with the direction of the quilt, of where your eyes are led around the blocks.
Okay.
So stripes are fantastic. Yeah, so yeah,
Wow.
all of those things.
So you said sometimes you just let it, you don't really have a process, you just let it evolve. Can you explain to us and walk through your creative process from like the idea of a quilt? I mean, let's, for instance, your tea towel one, you were saying you really wanted, I think you wanted something Australian.
Yeah, I really wanted to just shine out Australian. I really wanted all those icons. So that one, so the
And you're a
idea was
tea
that,
lover.
yeah, exactly. I love my tea. So yeah, no, that one came together. So that one actually, yeah, I'd collected different Australian things. A lot of it's thrifted from thrift stores. There was like a little bit of needlepoint in there, and all like the tea towels or dish towels. So I had a big pile of Australiana sort of things that I'd collected, and I just put them on my design wall and moved them around, and then really worked with that. And then, yeah, it sort of grew from that one. Definitely was definitely done on my design wall and just moving things around. Then looking at the colors and then going, right, well, okay, now I'm going to make the Whizbang circles that suit those colors that, have the pops of colors that I want. So, so it was the Whizbang circles that kind of bring it together. They kind of give it that point of color. Other times there was one that was with the floating circles, all in the sort of limited color palette, in the sort of pinks and oranges. That one I made the circles and I wasn't actually sure what I was going to do. So I made the circles and then it was, yeah, once again, then oh no, that one I sort of knew. Okay, I'm getting them mixed up. So I work in different ways. Sometimes I'll have a plan and sometimes I make it up as I go. Um, yeah, yeah.
That's
So
incredible. Wow. And what are some of the biggest challenges you find? I mean, you said this is really for beginners and people that, it's for all ranges, right?
yeah,
Beginners through experienced sewers. Can I ask this is a question for mine. Do people don't need sewing machines for this, do they?
yes,
They
yes.
do.
So
Okay. So I wasn't
if
sure
you
how much is done with a sewing machine.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Sewing machines make it super easy. It's just like you're placing the triangles, then you just zip around with the sewing machine, then they're
Right.
attached.
Got it.
Having
Okay.
said that, they can be done by hand.
Okay.
So, and I have
And just
had in
nuts.
workshops, people who do hand sewing, the needle becomes part of their hand. And so there's been times in workshops I've had hand sewers and they're almost faster than the machine sewers.
I
So
bet.
yeah, so if people do want to do it by hand, they're very, very welcome to. But I don't know. I use a machine. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, and so they can be done by machine.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
we also, just so you know, we do rent machines on Madeline Island as well. But people, if they're coming from close by, are certainly more than welcome to bring their own. We do have them on site, though. Some of the brand new Berninas, and they just need to contact our registrar if that's something that they'd like to do. Um, Another question, that was my question. What's the biggest challenge you face when creating a quilt?
I always say time. It's it's having time. But then when I think about that, then that's the whole great thing about a workshop. Is it's designated time to actually you're allowing yourself to go and make a quilt and be creative and play. How at home quite often all the other things come first. So that's always my first thing is time. Other challenges, that's time. So challenges to me, okay, challenges are actually that's when you're learning.
Yeah.
So if you're being challenged, that's you learning new things. And I just think that's the best thing. So so maybe another way of saying that would be, one of the challenges is getting yourself out of the way so you can just enjoy learning.
Right.
So,
And that's the beauty, like you said, of having a 5-day workshop versus sort of something 3 days at a guild. You really can sort of find your way along. And like you said, just remind me I mean, this is for all level, real beginners who are just stepping out into quilting for their first time to someone who can do something as detailed and as extravagant as that great big circle was, right?
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I have taught absolute beginners. So as long as well, even then, I mean, it's very, very basic sewing on the sewing machine. So I was going to say, so I guess as long as you have sewn a few things on it, like, a few straight lines on a sewing machine, then I can show you anything.
Amazing.
And that's the thing, because the techniques are quite different for a lot of people. Then, it's almost like everyone in the workshop's on the same sort of even keel anyway. So beginners don't have to feel like they're beginners. It's just everybody just coming together and learning new things. So yeah, yeah. No, it
That's
really is.
wonderful.
Yeah.
What impact, last question I have is what impact has living in Australia had on your quilting practice? How about that?
Yeah, look, it's really wonderful. When I go overseas, I travel overseas and people come up to me and go, "Ah, it's that Aussie style, or it's that, you're an Aussie quilter making that Australian style of quilt." And it's funny because we're in the middle of it. So, it's sort of trying to define what that is. And I think what that is, other people probably say different things, but I think that's what we've got is that we're quite eclectic with our fabric choices. So
Mm.
we're quite happy to move out of ranges. And that's quite often because our shops are quite small and so they can't stock a full range or, so, and just, yeah. So I think we love to mix our fabrics. And I think that our sunlight here is quite strong in Australia. So we got that, there's that sense of exuberance in our colours,
Yeah.
and also a sense of freedom because we don't have a really, the US has such a beautiful, strong history and tradition of quilting. So there's so much about preserving that and looking after that tradition and respecting that tradition. But I think that in Australia, because we don't have a really strong tradition, we're just going for it. We're just jumping in. We're having fun. We're just going, wow, let's just play with fabric. So I think that we do break the rules a little bit more. But
That's good.
that's my thought. Who knows? Yeah.
That's wonderful. Can you give us any kind of idea or about upcoming projects or exhibitions that you're in and that you're excited about? Are you going to be at Houston Market?
No, I won't be at Houston this year. So I've got a lot of teaching in Australia this year. But I've got an exhibition coming up in about 2 weeks called Craft Lab. And that
Mm.
one's an interesting because it's actually so alongside 20 other craftspeople. And it's a real mix. There's going to be, jewelers and ceramicists and glass blowers and doll makers and all sort of contemporary versions of those crafts. And I'm the quilter. So I'm really looking forward to that. And so that's really exciting. Then, yeah, and then of course Missa is wonderful. And yeah, and just I'm doing some driving trips around Australia.
Oh,
I
wow.
yeah, I tend to do driving trips. I think it's a great way to get to places that don't necessarily have airports. And so I do these little trips around, like, so I'll be driving off for about a month in my little Daisy mobile and I fill up the car with quilts, like literally fill it up to the rafters. It's
And then
amazing.
where do you head?
So I'll be heading up to the sort of north, or sort of up the north part of Australia. Um, well, halfway up, and yeah, and just going to different shops and different guilds, doing workshops all along the way, trunk shows, and
Well,
just
you
having an
must have
adventure.
such a following over there. It's going to be so nice to just be for people to be able to see you teach over here, Madeline
Yeah,
Island. We can't wait.
yeah.
I just, if there are any other questions, we are recording this. So if people wanted to, email in and let us know anything else, let me see if there's one more. No, we did that question. Please feel free. But we can't wait to have you, Rachaeldaisy, on the island. It's going to be a blast. There's always other workshops going on at the same time. So it's really nice to sort of commingle with what other people are interested in on Madeline Island. The food is delicious and the accommodations are so fun and spectacular. Comfortable beds, great pillows. And there's just the idea of all of us being together on campus together makes these workshops incredible. And we love having you there. So again, thanks so much for getting up so early this morning to join us. I'm so glad we got to see each other in person. Anything else you want to say before we let you go?
I will just show you one more thing because it's one of those
Great.
things. I've just shown you a whole lot of photos. And so I really like, and in a photo, you can't see how soft and squishy these quilts are. So they're made differently from the traditional potholder way. I've made them in such a way, I make them in such a way that they're much more suited to quilts. And you can see how like squishy and soft these quilts are.
Ah,
Because people think, oh, are they thick? Are they heavy? Now they are a little bit heavier than your usual quilt. But they're still, you can sleep under them if you want. They're definitely usable and yep, you can sort of see how soft they are. Yeah, no,
Colors are gorgeous.
they're lovely. Yeah, yeah. So I
They
love
have
to
to
share.
make a perfect gift for people.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Little big flower.
Lovely. Oh, look at
We just go on
that.
forever showing them. I know,
Crazy.
the big
I love it.
flower.
You better bring those all over with you when you come over,
Yes.
okay?
Oh, that's the plan, is to bring as many as I can.
Please,
Because
please
to
do.
see them in real life, yeah, and to
I
have
think
them there
that's the
as
best part.
examples
Yeah.
for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time again, Rachaeldaisy, and getting up early. All of us from Misa, Christy, and Maddie and myself really enjoyed spending the day with you. And for everyone else that took the time to sit in and listen to what Rachaeldaisy's workshop's going to be all about, and how how she's going to work the 5 days. Sign up, Madeline Island School of Arts, madelineschool.com, and register for Rachaeldaisy's workshop, August 12th to the 16th this summer on Madeline Island. We hope to see you all there. Thanks, Rachaeldaisy. Take
Thank
care. We'll
you.
see you soon. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.